Welcome to Law and Justice. I'm Jane Mulcahy, and today it is a huge pleasure for me to be joined by Margot van Sluytman, a poet, restorative justice researcher and practitioner from Canada. Thank you for being with me, Margot.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure.
And this is a series on how to talk policy and influence people. But Margot today is going to begin with a poem, which would be great. Will you share a poem with me, Margot?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read my poem, Up from the Ashes. It's from my book, Dance with Your Healing, Tears Let Me Begin to Speak. It's a poetry and a journal for healing words. So a workbook, essentially, up from the ashes. Hand fashioning my own spirit is coupled with letting go of his. The dance is held fast by the two bullets that found themselves holding the blood that poured from his flesh and struggles to break into mad movement. Young man, my father, drowning into the other space into which we could not follow. So, language began to bleed forth.
Okay, wow. Thank you, Margot.
You're welcome.
I met you it wasn't last year now, it was 2018 in October in
Yes.
Montreal at the ICPA conference on corrections.
Yes.
How did you, I suppose, get into this field? Why did restorative justice and Sawbonna become important in your life, Margot?
They became important, Jane, because of my dad's murder. My family moved from Guyana, South America, to Canada in 1969, and we moved here for a better life, a safer life. And on an Easter Monday, 1978, it was March 27, Theodore went into work on his day off, and he was murdered in an armed robbery. That affected our lives profoundly. My father was 40 years old. My mom was 35. And I have 3 siblings, and my big sister, 18, me, 16, my little sister, 9, and my brother, 5. It affected our lives in an absolute traumatic way. We were in the country for 9 years. And from the time that happened, I wanted to know how it would be possible to murder someone and live.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I do not believe in capital punishment, so it's not,
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 people that murdered Theodore.
Mm.
So my whole life has been hand fashioning my reality. That's what it's been. I left home 3 months after Theodore was murdered.
Okay.
Yes, I was a child. And when I look back on it now, I mean, my eldest grandchild is soon to be 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow.
I
So
was only a small bit older than they are.
yes. So it is my father's murder that catapulted me, and also perhaps a sensibility, I mean, I really have always wondered what makes us do horrific things to each other, with each other, which we're all capable,
Mm-hmm.
and by degrees we all do it. And then how do we still maintain the heart of our being, our humanity? So that's what started me on a trajectory. It's a very lengthy trajectory, but that's the nugget that took me into this world of justice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was interested in justice prior. I will tell you, I was involved with food banks and that kind of thing, but it took me into another area.
Okay. Well, can I just say I'm very sorry for your loss, because obviously your life changed. How could it not? Anyone's life would be ruptured beyond belief. And when I met, I think I still felt your grief. I hadn't obviously met you before, but I could feel
Yes.
the trauma still in you, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
And do you find writing a useful tool, I suppose, in ventilating some of your feelings and exploring, you know, the human condition and grief and loss and rage and pain, Margot.
Beyond the shadow of a doubt. And one, to me, the gift, blessing, if you will, of speaking with you right now is because when we did meet, it was a very poignant and very sad time. And trauma that I did not know that I still had came to the surface. And as a victim of crime, now I'm not a victim as a woman, as a human, as a poet, as a researcher, no, but as a crime victim, to be able to actually express ourselves, this is a commonality around victims. To be able to express our anger tends to annoy people. They think, I mean, our trauma terrifies, and it ends up being a label for us. You know, last year this time I was in The Hague at the University of The Hague, and I gave a talk, a lecture on Sawbonna, and a woman there said to me, she said, "What is very interesting, are victims not the ones that are considered weak and incapable?" I said, "Yes, we often are, and we're often told to be quiet, don't say anything." And when Theodore was murdered, this is the image that stays with me, and I've written about it. It was like somebody took a dagger and slit my throat.
That you were silenced, you mean, is it? That you couldn't express anything, any of the tumultuous emotions that you were feeling?
Not a one. And I was a writer before Dad was murdered.
Okay.
I mean, I, you know, the editor of the yearbook, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, Notre Dame. Just saw Sister Corrigan, the principal, just before the pandemic started. She's the last person I hugged before the pandemic.
Wow, that's interesting, yeah.
Lucille is just wonderful. But at Notre Dame, I published this kind of stuff. And when I was in grade 13, we had grade 13 back in my day. They don't have it now. But a girl in my class gave me a journal. And I mean, I was already writing, but she said to me, she said, "Write your ache, write your pain." And I was very, very moved. We were not good friends or anything like that. She's a lovely person. I remember her to this day, Rose. And in that moment, I remember, then I started to speak about it. 2 bullets, you know. Like I said, I left home at 16. I met a lot. My life is not a dull life. There's a lot of a lot of gratitude, Jane.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when it really, really started in terms of writing about that. And then alongside the poetry, and voice started to feel as if it was a little, I mean, minuscule, returning.
And so then when did you get more actively interested, though, in I suppose, implementing change in the criminal justice system? I take it that didn't happen at the age of 16.
No, that didn't happen. But social justice, as I said, has always been part of my, we grew up that way. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, you feed people, you find people a place to live or help with community. But that aspect came out, from the time that Daddy, I still say Daddy, I guess, you know.
Because you were a child.
It's quite interesting. From the time he was murdered, I really wanted to know the men, 3 of them did it, who murdered my father. And I didn't want to know them to, you know, whale them in the head or say, you know, and trust me, I'm West Indian, so I could do that, but it wasn't on my mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, do you know what you did? And how do you feel about that? So at any rate, to jump forward a bit, I was writing and publishing poetry and etc. And I wrote this book, the first poem that I read to you, Jane, Dance with Your Healing. So I'm a member of the National Association for Poetry Therapy. And they gave me an award in 2007 for my expressive writing courses, lectures, and all that. I mean, came with a nice amount of cash too, and it's a great community. So I had to do a keynote in Portland. At any rate, I remember I was on the stage doing the talk, and I felt my father's bullets in me.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember feeling them. Yeah, no word of a lie, girl. I mean, I would go to my grave knowing this. I felt them, and I thought,
Where did you feel them, if I may ask? In a part of your body, you could feel them?
oh yeah, where Daddy was shot. He was
Okay.
shot in his back, and he was shot a quarter of an inch from his heart.
Okay. And you had some kind of pain manifestation there in those locations?
It wasn't actually pain. It
No.
wasn't pain. I saw them going in.
Okay.
I saw them going in. And that was in 2000, and when did I get that? Oh, 2007, so 13 years ago. And I'm on the stage. I'm supposed to give a talk, and there, lots of people. And I just, in my mind, I said, you're not finished with this. Because I thought when I wrote this book, I published other books, but I thought when I wrote Dance with Your Healing, I was done with that, but I was not. And so because of this award, one of my father's murderers read about, then researched what well, he didn't know it was me, but, anyway, eventually contacted me. And that, I was curious about it, because I thought, well, more than curious, I was moved. And of course, lots of people said, stay away. I mean, so I chose to meet one of my father's murderers, and it was powerful at the time. It felt authentic at the time. It felt genuine. And it was after that I realized, wait a second, is there like an actual process that you could do? So I did my own due diligence to make sure that I was safe.
Sure.
But I had no idea that there was such a thing as this restorative justice business. To sort of fast forward a little bit, I did not finish my undergrad until I was 38 years old. And I was considered a big academic and all this. I mean, big, like for a kid, your parents think you're going places. Plus, that's the expectation. I wasn't bad, but I ended up leaving school. I mean, I did a college diploma. I became a legal secretary. I, did ESL, but I didn't do like the nuts and bolts of academia. But I ended up finishing ended up doing undergrad when I was 38. And then when I was 48, I started on a master's. And that was about 4 years after meeting one of the murderers. And my master's was supposed to be on therapeutic writing. Okay. My thesis was supposed to be on therapeutic writing, but I went to a restorative justice conference, and I asked a couple of questions, and I recognized, okay, people are speaking about victims. They're, these are lovely, generous, authentic people doing really, really good work, but a voice was missing.
Yeah, the actual victim's voice. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And another piece is missing too, and I'll just put this in here. Yeah. But also, to be an angry victim, people don't like to see it. So I was invited to lots of places after I met Daddy's murderer. But they liked it because I really do believe in shared humanity, and I want this person and all of the people that have done all kinds of stuff to be okay, to be fine. But when things piss me off, or if I asked a question, it'd be like, like I was doing something wrong. And to me, I find that beyond reprehensible. Why can a murderer be mad, but a victim can't be mad? So anyway.
Well, it's a wider point about trauma generally. We don't like it. It hurts.
Yes.
It hurts us to hear it. And so it's like we will tolerate voices so long as they're reasonable. And as soon as there's emotion and pain and anger and all these very, in my view, justifiable things. But I do know, for me even, they can be painful to listen.
I must tell you, this is what I'm fascinated about speaking with you, why I am fascinated. And I have a very profound faith in terms of life wanting us to grow and expand. And that faith also says it is not always done on a particular track or normalized trajectory. So two of my favorite words, besides Sawbonna, is liminal, and the other one is paradox. So you and I speaking to me is excruciatingly important because you said something to me after I let my rage, which other people came up and thanked me for.
Yeah.
I got notes, and people making comments about that whole process of someone trying to forget how we knew each other. But you said something to me and it stayed with me and stayed with me. You said, well, you know what, even maybe a few years ago, I would have said, go get some counseling.
Mm.
And I thought, now that's a genuine,
Mm.
courageous, respectful thing to say. And it has stayed with me, Jane, and it stays with me. So yes, I will cry. I cry, dance with your healing, but that's why I find it quite profound, because at that moment you spoke the truth. You said, at another time I would have said, go get some counseling. And I'm like, girl, have I not heard that 1,000 times? But nobody wants to hear that we are more, like nobody wants, well, that's not fair to say nobody, because of course we're growing in this whole area as well.
But it's the point of the, if you can't find empathetic witnesses, to use Gabor Mate's phrase, in the community, if you have to always pay to be heard,
yes,
there's a gap, there is a gap there in terms of healing, I think. And I just didn't understand that before. I didn't understand the importance that any of us can play in someone else's life by just listening to something that's very uncomfortable and painful, and kind of going, I get it, even though we can't possibly understand exactly how you feel without having gone through it. And even with that, I'm sure you feel different to your siblings, to how your mother felt. But there is something in just validating and accepting that these are valid emotions.
yes.
And that without that, it lodges in our body, actually, that the trauma stays inside of us because we can't ventilate it. But Margot, so you have written a report as well recently on Sawbonna and restorative justice. Firstly, what does the phrase or the word Sawbonna mean for listeners who aren't familiar with this concept?
You bet. Sawbonna is a Zulu word, number one. It means I see you. Well, it firstly means hello. Okay. That hello, it means I see the human in you. It is akin to Ubuntu, but it is vaster because it incorporates all of you. I'm not just looking for how adorable you are. I'm seeing the crap in you. You're seeing the crap in me. Mm-hmm. So it basically, I see your soul.
Okay.
I see your humanity, our shared humanity.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, I absolutely, I love it. And it has taken me, so my master's thesis is called Sawbonna, Justice as Lived Experience. And the paper that is just newly published by the Department of Justice Canada is Sawbonna, Victim-Led Restorative Justice.
Okay. Interesting. And tell me about that. So how do you envisage that would occur, and what's the difference between it being, say, victim-led and criminal justice agency-led, let's say, or led by someone else entirely different?
Well, keep in mind I'm a poet.
Okay.
I'm a poet.
Yeah.
I'm whatever language takes us into possibility, takes us into courage with the liminal is extremely important. Therefore, it is all intertwined. Mm-hmm. It is all intertwined. What Sawbonna essentially, it was funny because of course I knew we would speak of this. Sawbonna demonstrates how to use the challenges that we face as opportunities. And the key word there, it is the challenges we face. And those challenges go back to trauma. They go back to things like forgiveness, the F word. I write about this in this paper, And yes, it's a beautiful idea, and we can argue it, I call forgiveness, and I write about it in here, a grand narrative. Jane, you forgive me for slapping your child, and we're best friends. Yay. And in your mind, you're like, lady, you slapped my kid. What is wrong with you?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I'll never leave them alone with her again, kind of thing, or whatever.
Yeah. So there's something simplistic. I understand the germ of the beauty of it, but Sawbonna does not ask that. Sawbonna says, look, we are messy.
Mm.
We are messy. So essentially, when we met in Montreal there, and that was beyond painful to me. So, I mean, people listening will want to know what happened. Essentially, the murderer that I met, with whom I was supposed to be standing on that stage, we were supposed to be giving a talk together. Half of that audience was there because I brought them there. He forgot the heart of the matter. He just came to me and said, oh, this is bigger than us. And he went up and did the thing. And he spoke and did not mention Theodore, did not mention how we know each other, why we know each other. And my reasoning was very simple. We are working to build bridges with disconnected communities. So that was absolutely horrific. What happened after that is I came back to Ontario. I was giving 2 keynotes, like the next, like right after. And one was for a lovely agency that works with fellas coming out of prison. And they asked me to do the keynote for their big fundraising dinner. Again, a great honor. But I said to a friend of mine, how am I going to do that? I was just like, this person forgot the heart of the heart of Sawbonna. And my friend said to me, what has changed? Sawbonna it's actually expanded because now the lens for you, which sort of stopped there with that second time broken relationship, has now expanded because you know Sawbonna matters that much more. And honest to God, that was the beauty. I didn't have to worry about forgiving, this and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh gosh, yeah, the work matters. And to me, Sawbonna takes it to another level. I don't have to worry about forgiveness. What really does matter, however, is to be very concerned in relation to policy and also in relation to us. I don't have to like you. You could do whatever you do. I don't know your story. And even if I know your story, I can't do anything about it. But Sawbonna says, we are humans first. Therefore, those challenging things that happen, they give us opportunity to remain in that place. And the week after I gave that keynote, I was at Grand Valley Prison, giving again with women there. And I shared some of this story with them. And because it was so fresh with me, if you want to see the empathy and the beauty and the camaraderie, now these are women that have done all kinds of things for lots of reasons. Don't worry, my heart is with them.
Yeah.
We sat in circle together, Jane, and each of us shared Sawbonna in a space that you would think maybe, no, that's not possible. So this is what it is. It teases out these ideas of, you've got to do this and you've got to do this. And I'm going to fill out a form and say that now I'm in restorative justice and I'm in shared humanity. I understand those things. I truly do. And I must say, there is great work. Sawbonna says, let's take it up a notch. Let's not even a notch. Let's just make it a bit more inclusive. And the Department of Justice wanted me. They invited me, and I was beyond moved. And I wrote it, and now they're interested in doing some stuff for victims. With the caveat that you're not taking away from offenders. It is not like that. That is impossible because that is silly. And where is the heart in that? Doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, some people probably think they are incompatible, but the point is, particularly given what you and your family experienced, you guys all had very deep wounds that didn't stop at the prosecution and conviction of the killers. They went on and on and on. I mean, I met you decades later, and I could feel it. And albeit now I didn't realize actually from our meeting that you had been meant to present with the
That
individual.
person, yes, I
Yeah, I
was.
didn't
Yes, I
realize
was.
that. I thought
That is why I was there. I was there. I was there, self-funded, because
right.
they asked me to be, I was asked to be in support. So no, no, no. So it was just like,
Yes.
and it was close to Theodore's birthday. It was
Yes.
going to be
No,
my
I
father's
remember.
birthday.
I remember, and I remember you feeling very kind of enraged because he didn't mention Theodore's name. I thought that was the main thing, but of course, if you were meant to be sharing the stage, it was a different level of rupture of the relationship for sure. But what
Yes,
was interesting too is I remember asking you, well, might this now not be the time to just cut your ties with this guy, seeing that you've been sort of friends or had a kind of a relationship for
a
several,
trust.
yeah, and had that really brought the healing or the resolution to your life that you had hoped. um, and it is interesting that the subsequent talks have kind of helped you see that, you know, aside from the fact that you can never I guess heal those wounds entirely, how could anyone? That's a reality that is just there.
Absolutely.
It's a lifelong process of
Absolutely.
of healing little by little. But just, I suppose, having a kind of survivor mission. I like that concept from Judith Herman, that you can never be what you were before exactly, but you can in a way transcend the trauma by giving it as a gift to other, you know, other survivors, that I can bring my knowledge and my learning and my voice
Yes.
and my capacity for language like you have to people in power and get them to listen.
Yes. I'd like to read a poem now. It
Yes,
just struck me.
thank you.
I ended my master's with a poem, and I ended this this research paper, with a poem. And just as we're speaking, just when you said you like that, you know, survivor piece in you, that survivor, it's extremely important. And I ended with this poem, and this poem is from my book, which is called The Other Inmate. This is also a book. So The Other Inmate, Mediating Justice, Mediating Hope. This is a poetry and a workbook for restorative practices. So I have used it with all types of people that have been harmed, victimized. I've used it with people that have been criminalized. So inside, use it at shelters, all of this, homeless shelters. So, and it's also again, Department of Justice Canada has been very supportive of my journey in many ways. So I have a lot of gratitude. They funded the translation of The Other Inmate into French, just like they did this paper. Of course, it's a government paper, so this one for sure had to be in both language, French and English. But L'autre prisonnière, that is The Other Inmate. And this poem that I'm going to read, I ended this paper with.
Okay.
From The Other Inmate. It's called Resilience Will Not Sleep. In my heavy, heaving armor, victim to your untimely spilled blood, renewal whispers. Too many years injustice held me prisoner. Now another call comes. No more, no more, no more silencing.
Thank you, Margot.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, Canada has a unique history, as every country does.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an awful lot of Indigenous people in your prisons.
We do.
There are very deep racial and cultural wounds that haven't even begun healing, really. I don't think, despite the apologies from the state. And like when I was in Montreal, I was struck by the constant acknowledgement of Algonquin land, or whatever
Yes.
land that people were
Yes.
on. And indeed, this was the gift that I got from the people I don't know whether it was made by men in prison or boys in prison, but Indigenous people anyway. I brought it home for my son. And
Beautiful.
I think
Beautiful.
you'll have got one of these guys as well, maybe in your pack. It was made by Inishuk people. And it says, it was built to resemble humans. Today, they remind us of our dependence on each other and the value of strong relationships, which is
Absolutely.
really beautiful. I mean, that goes to the heart of Sawbonna as well, that we are all connected. I think as well, it was through you on Twitter that I came across Murray Sinclair, the wonderful, beautiful senator, who is an Indigenous man and so powerful in
Yes.
speaking about the atrocities to the First Nations people. Do you work a lot with people from the Indigenous communities, Margot?
Well, I'm going to say this, and I do not say it with an ounce, I say it with respect.
Mm.
When I go to the prisons, especially out west, yes. Yes. In this newest paper, Sawbonna Victim-Led Restorative Justice, there's a chapter, Incarcerated Indigenous People Are Victims of a Broken Justice System Too.
Mm-hmm.
I have a full section on that because indeed, Sawbonna, and I'm just looking, I'm just going to the page here. I spoke with Murray St. Clair. Oh my gosh. I don't think, well, you will not know this. When I was on my way to that conference where you and I met,
Mm-hmm.
when transformation in a form that felt very painful, but as I said, I have a very big faith. So
It was meant to happen, kind of thing.
Pardon me?
That it was kind of meant to
Yes.
happen.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm speaking groovy now at the time, as you know, and for a short while after, but I have a very rich community. I speak about that at some point. But, you know, on the way to that conference, when I go to conferences, I usually go to one airport, but I went to Billy Bishop instead of Pearson. I am walking through the airport, I see a Turtle Islander. So her name is Lee Maracle. She is a fantastic poet and writer, and Lee is fantastic. We have exchanged books and all this. And I swear to God, I'm like you. And then I turn around and there is Murray St. Clair sitting in front of her. And I said, oh my God, I'm not a groupie girl, but for you and Steven Tyler, that's Aerosmith,
Yeah.
I could, and maybe Eddie Van Halen, I could lose my mind. I swear to God. So we ended, poor guy, he's just, and so we ended up having a conversation, and we had spoken just the year before on CBC because they had a program on RJ, and I called in and I spoke with him, and he was just gracious and beautiful, and he is colleagues and friends with a friend of mine, Senator Kim Pate. And,
oh yes.
Oh yeah, and she's magical. I mean, she's just straight up. Actually, I start this paper with a quote by Kim. She gave me a quote, anyway, the point is, so a couple of things come up in terms of Murray St. Clair, and I know I'm going to jump around a bit.
That's okay.
Your daughter, so the other day I listened to a piece with you and your child, Aurora, great name.
Thanks.
And she said a couple of things that moved me profoundly, just the fact that you gave her the space to have a voice. And I walked quite a bit, and I was thinking about her this morning, and I thought, children and victims. Now, keep in mind, my landscape of victim includes, it is not simply, you know, people who have been, like my dad, being murdered. It's a much vaster quilt, if you will. But I thought, oh my God, children and victimized people, same. Nobody wants to hear your voice. People tell you what to do. There's this, you know, sort of, you're stuck in a place. And for First Nations, a very similar thing. You know, it is changing now, certainly not fast enough, but people like Lee Maracle, Murray St. Clair, you know, Tanya Talega, you know, Seven Fallen Feathers, this is an exquisite must-read book. And there's another one, it's so funny because it just came out, I think last year. It's called From the Ashes by Jesse Thistle.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, I'm sorry, sinus.
No problem.
When I saw that, I just, you know, on Twitter, I said, oh my goodness, I have a poem, and I sent it to him. And anyway, but he was interviewed just maybe a week ago by University of Waterloo. That's where I did my undergrad. My undergrad is philosophy, by the way. And in the interview, listen to this, and your daughter came to me again because of what she spoke about. Home is connected. Home is connection. It is not just buildings. Home is connection. And in relation to Sawbonna, within the lens of what this country needs to do and where we need to continue to go, because it has started, the conversation has started, is exactly that. Sawbonna says, we have done, you know, non-First Nations people have done horrific things. That's a fact. I'm like, yeah, that's a given to me. Sawbonna says, not just because you want to be helpful are people going to like you. Yes, they're going to say, leave me alone, you know. But what is crucial, and Murray does this, is the building of connection, building of trust, you know, because connection without trust is kind of tricky, you know, or broken trust. Again, this is painful and horrific for children. It's terrible. For adults. Well, you saw the trauma coming out in me. You know, it was there. I didn't even recognize it was there until another trigger came, you know. So in relation to going back to incarcerated individuals that are Indigenous, we need to work and to listen to what is required. What do the communities need us to be helpful to do? What is required?
Yes.
And Sawbonna offers a way in, Jane. This is what I write about here. We are connected to the possibility of reconciliation. It does not mean it's easy, you see. Some people are like, oh yeah, you know, Canada's doing nothing, or it's too difficult. I'm like, hello, that's life.
Anything worth doing is challenging.
Indeed. Sawbonna. I mean, my mom says Sawbonna now. My big sister says Sawbonna. They all know. I just said I'm, you know, gonna be talking, and they knew. And it's shared humanity, and it's not this, oh my God, I'm so adorable. Well, yes, I'm that, but I'm also, you know.
Yeah,
so
I have a raging Hulk inside me as well at times, you know.
Of course, and it saves a lot of us. It can save us. So to answer, to respond to that question, which I probably made a really, really long answer, we need leaders, and we also need to be leaders in terms of voice. And Murray St. Clair does that. Lee Maracle, as I said, through her writing, does that. The stories that are coming, that we are listening to, and making space for people to be angry with an actual desire to reknit and rebuild. It takes time.
Of course. But it starts with an acknowledgement, I think, that no emotions are ugly, or they have a function, and they need to come to the light of day. And if we're the perpetrators of harm, we have to accept that there will be anger, rage, sadness, grief, and loss for the cultures that we've decimated. And there's few countries around the world that don't have some awful skeletons in their closet, is the other matter. There was another beautiful video, beautiful but also you know, very sad and challenging, in relation to Dr. Nadine Caron, who is the first Native Surgeon General in Canada. and she was talking about how when she graduated from medicine in her university in Canada, she got a phone call from the head of the university saying, "Well done, we're so proud of you." And it was kind of an uncomfortable honor because she was the first person from a First Nations background, and was kind of like, why is this news? It shouldn't be news. It shouldn't be a big deal. But that her appointment as Surgeon General, the first Native person, brought tears to the eyes of this elderly woman who was about 85, and she was going, "Oh my God, I never thought this could happen. This is amazing, and I am so happy for the children that they can see this
Yes.
possibility."
Yes.
Do you think restorative practices more generally, because there's an awful lot to be learned from Indigenous communities just in terms of how we see the collective
Yes.
and the common humanity, and frankly Western democracies have kind of tried to stamp that out and make it all individualistic, in that my achievements are
Yeah.
mine alone, when of
Yes.
course they're not. They're
No, they're not.
dependent on my family circumstances and the support, the nurturing I've had in my life, and you too, the mentors that you've had along the way have helped you.
Yes. Yes. Excuse me.
So do you think that we can bring restorative practices into schools, into not just the justice system, but wider in terms of building bridges between communities?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I will tell you something that's very interesting. When I was doing my master's at Athabasca University, I have told you this, but I had to actually have two supervisors. One for the autoethnography, which was my methodology. So it's using your story as the research. It makes it, you actually do a lot more work. People go, "Oh my God, you're navel gazing." I'm like, yeah, you go do the research, man, because you really have to be very rigorous.
Yeah.
So that was Dr. Carolyn Riddell. And then the other one, Dr. Dale Dewhurst, he was for the law piece. And, I just lost my, so we were talking about, two things. Dale said, just continue to use Sawbonna. It will become ubiquitous like gas stations, Margot. It is a great concept. He's a lawyer. I mean, totally supportive. But we also had a conversation once. So we take restorative practices. We take Sawbonna to the students, right? We do that. Great. It can work. My brother is a teacher as well, international schools for years and years. And he learned about this business, restorative justice. Anyway, then the conversation came up. What about the teachers? What about in the staff rooms? What about in administration? What about these areas? And I think that that's a point that can be too easily missed. So the kids, like the little tabula rasa dumbass, they don't know anything. We're going to give them all of this information, but I'm going to fight with you. And when I have a fight with you, I'm just going to sit on that side and I'm not going to talk to you. So yes, I believe absolutely we can take shared humanity, with our children, grandchildren as well, of course. I think it must not simply be, the big word now, silo. It shouldn't be siloed. It shouldn't be for the children.
Yeah.
It should be part of a holistic manner of addressing how we do justice, which is, I just love this art on your wall, but it's the heart, justice is about the heart. Now the heart breaks, the heart opens up, the heart bleeds, the heart pumps, So indeed, it should go there. It's starting to happen in small ways. And the one piece that I'm not certain if it is occurring is, yes, we talk to our children about respect, relationship, responsibility, and what those things mean about Sawbonna, about shared humanity. Are we doing it in administration?
Yes.
That's a piece that I really feel is required to then, because of course we mirror, the kids will mirror what they see us. You're a mom, I'm a grandma. They look at what we do. Now, this is not trying to make ourselves perfect, because that's just...
It's an impossible, pointless task.
Yes. Yes.
There's a wonderful woman I came across during my own research called Dr. Sandy Bloom, who's big in the trauma field, and her whole kind of concept is that we live in trauma organized societies, and that also our propensity for repetition compulsion or traumatic reenactment, where we may not even remember stuff from our childhood or our attachment behaviors, we bring with us. So we will behave in certain ways unconsciously with our partners, with our children, but also with our colleagues, our work colleagues, you know, and certain things will wound us that actually have very little to do with the here and now, but are from way back, and we're not even aware. Yeah, sometimes you know, transgenerational stuff. Again, if we're talking about the cultural atrocities, if I'm a First Nation person meeting someone who is a very stony face looking at me, I can perceive in quite a different way than someone without that history of cultural trauma, you know. And so awareness of all these matters is very valuable to all of us, if only to kind of realize some of the time, you know what, it's not about me. This is not actually about me at all.
It's interesting that you say that. I was speaking again with my friend Reinicke, and really Dr. Reinicke Langell, her research, her work is exquisite. It's exquisite. And it's funny because we were talking about patriarchy and how it is like you can get angry at your brother or at your partner. It's not specifically them, it's that they are a male. Just the maleness in and of itself can just put the hackles up, you know. And I mean,
I know what you mean. The privilege as well.
Well, that's, we were talking, well, and the fact of not being able to say, yes, I have it, or to feel somehow you're being unkind if you say, but you are a white man. Just that, you're man and then you're white. It's not an insult. It's recognizing what that means, you see. And I am so grateful for the psychologists, the poets, the painters, nature. I'm looking, she looks pretty good out my window. Because yes, these things we don't know. We don't know, and we don't know what will trigger us. And one of the reasons I did, I will tell you this, I wanted to meet the murderers because I felt at that time, actually, my eldest grandchild was not yet born. He was 2 years away, Riley. But I thought, oh my goodness, I have two daughters, you know, Olivia and Jessica. And I just thought, and they will have children. I want the bones. You know, I've written several poems about how the body remembers.
Yes, right.
So I was hoping to do my little part to try and shift whatever it is we shift in the body, to be quite honest with you. And that was a key part for me. I just thought, how do we do that? And not necessarily judge, like I'm better than you because, you know, no, people do mean things. I mean, you know, we do that, but there's a way to sort of transcend that. And again, I believe it is through poetry. I truly do. It is through language. It's through, I have a spirit name. I am Raven Speaks.
Yes, yeah. It's a good name for you. Who gave you that name, Margot?
Well, it's the most beautiful, remarkable thing. 20 years ago now, my marriage ended. I was married for 14 years. And when that happened, it was quite painful, you know. And a friend of mine said, I'm going to, come with me, I'm going to a sweat lodge in Northern Ontario. I'm like, what is a sweat lodge? I have no clue. So we went, and it was part of his community. I mean, he is not First Nations, but he does cranial sacral
okay,
work.
right. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the best, Mark. But we went, and I get there, and three or four elders wanted to name me. And
That's
I'm
so
like,
funny.
I know. And I'm just like, no thanks. And I wasn't being rude. Like, I mean, here is what went through my mind. I thought, okay, I'm a woman. There are expectations on me. I was raised Catholic. There are expectations on me.
Mm-hmm.
There are expectations that just make me crazy. Now I'm going to get some, spirit name, and people are going to say, oh, you're pretending to be who you're not. And and I'm like, I don't need any more, like, call me a poet and a mom. That's enough for me. Well, one of them insisted on naming me, and I said, fine. And yeah, he did a very simple ceremony, and we spoke for a bit. It was out in nature, and he said, are you ready for your name? And he told me, Raven Speaks. Well, I started to sob my eyes out, because being Guyanese, I'm Canadian Guyanese, from Guyana. I love Guyana. But in our culture, there is an expression, and it says, and it's mainly for women. Okay, so if you talk too much,
Okay.
oh girl, did you eat parrot beatie? It means eating the ass of a parrot. It's an expression that
Nice. Yeah.
and
Kind of evocative, to be fair. Yeah.
yeah, oh, honest to God, I'm like, oh my God, you eat parrot beatie? That's how you say it. So that was number one. And then sometimes with the girl's father, he would say that. He goes, oh, you talk too much, la la la. That was, so those things occurred. And when I got the name Raven Speaks, there were more things, like asking questions. You ask a question, you get a slap. When you're little, you don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And when I got that name, I was just out of my gourd, indeed. I mean, writing, publishing, that kind of stuff. So that's something about my mom says it now. She says, oh, girl, you're Raven. Like, my mom does have her accent may not be as deep as that. She doesn't think it is.
Yeah.
But there's something that's really, I see that as connected. Now, I don't use it to say, look, now I'm First Nations people, look at me. It's not like that, because I'm not. I mean, and I don't do all this, the thing where you do these tests to see what's in your bones. I mean, we were in Guyana for 6 generations.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I forget what not ancestry, but the DNA stuff. I've never done it. I will never do it. I don't care. I mean, Van Sluytman is every color of the rainbow. It is the truth. I mean, and First Nations as well in Guyana.
Did the man? It was a man who named you, was it?
Yes.
Did he give you an explanation for why he thought this was a good name for you?
I can't remember.
Because to me, it's very evocative, given your coloring, the dark hair, and also then the speaks part about it, given the fact that you felt kind of silenced after Theodore's murder, but then also are very, poetic and use language to express, very interesting choice.
Honest to God, I have no idea. Like, I don't have any remembering of that. I just remember this is what I remember, okay? When he told me that name, I just started to cry. I just thought, I mean, I knew a little bit about Raven, Raven is pretty resilient.
Yeah.
And Raven will eat what Raven needs to eat to survive. And, so, I mean, and Raven is also like, don't mess with me, Raven is a Sawbonna bird. Like, I'm not just all adorable and huggy and all this. I mean, I'm those things, but but it was the speak part. When he said that, I almost dropped down dead. And then in this country, we have Michael Ondaatje,
yes.
So Michael, I've never met him, but I wrote a poem to him. And anyway, his office was beside a friend of mine at York. But in his culture, this is probably way TMI, but in Michael's culture, in his book called Running in the Family, which is a fictional autobiography, but it is, I mean, it's a spectacular little book. His dad was an alcoholic, so he talks about he and Christopher's life. That's his brother. At any rate, but in that book, he said, in his culture, if you eat the tongue of the Talagoya lizard, there's a lizard, he's from Sri Lanka, what used to be Ceylon, then you are the scribe of your family. And I thought, okay, so, you're a male, so you're a scribe.
Yeah.
As a woman, you just talk too much.
Yes, isn't it interesting how we internalize these expectations as well? And there's also a thing, I've spoken to other activists about, because we downgrade emotion generally and we see it as a female thing when of course it's
Yes.
not. It's
Yes.
it's a survival mechanism, and it's also what binds us, and it's also what makes us connect. And mammals have emotions, you know, so it's not a female male thing. And men would be healthier and happier and less violent if they were able to honor their feelings and name them, and embrace even the inconvenient, ugly, volatile ones. But that women feel that they have to police their own tone. So it's kind of going back to the anger again, you know. There's an activist called Vicky, I can't think of her last name now, but she was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and she said she has to try and pretend almost to be a man and approach her advocacy like a male so that she is taken seriously, you know.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Because we think men are reasonable, whereas we're all reasonable when we're safe and able to access that part of our brain. Sometimes when we're unsafe, or when we are emotional for whatever reason, that part of our brain, male or female, goes out the window and is inaccessible to us.
Yes.
But it's just interesting in terms of policy making.
Yes, okay.
How we must sometimes maybe edit ourselves. Have you found as a victim, as a survivor, and as someone who wants to influence policy, do you feel you can be who you are now, you know, with all the mess, with all the emotion, with all the reason, with all the many voices? Do you feel you can do that comfortably and be listened? Can you be heard, do you think?
Well, in a word, yes.
Right.
And I feel like crying when I speak of it, because this is, when I was young, I used to sprint. I was a sprinter, quite fast, I will say. My big sister was faster, but anyway, Loretta, but that's okay. She was 2 years older. But there is something that I have such gratitude for, and it is this. The whole process from, you know, being in Guyana, where Daddy told us stories. We used to camp on the floor and he would tell us stories. We had connection and it was beautiful, and he loved camping and the outdoors. But that whole trajectory, which my life essentially ended when I was 16, and now I am 58. I watch it, Jane, and I look at it and I think, now when I speak or send an email, all right, I get a response back. Part of that is doing something that, you know, I speak about this. This is not about trying to be biggie or anything like this, you know, but I finished my master's, my first. I actually started a second, great content, but the space was on Kindred, so I left. But my first master's, I finished it when I was 50 years old.
Good for you.
That particular, I mean, I was writing and publishing, but I wanted that, you see. The content of it, the methodology of it, what it is, what it speaks to. I mean, I would not have been able to write that when I was 25, because I would not have lived. So at this particular point in terms of policy making, yes, I have had the privilege of speaking with Canada's Justice Minister in terms of speaking about victim-led restorative justice, and the ombudsperson, or the ombuds, they say it now, for victims of crime, Heidi Illingworth, marvelous person. These are people that actually do believe in restorative practices, and in asking me to write about Sawbonna, victim-led restorative justice, to me it was an absolute gift of possibility because they wanted to hear. Heidi understood it a bit more, but our justice minister and his, what do you call it, parliamentary secretary, etc. These folks are listening, and I do not feel I am being treated as the poor victim. But I speak, when I talk to people, I cry. I mean, I sit in the office with them, I cry. I'm on a phone call, I'm crying because I miss my father every single day. Every day. Paradox. At the very same time, I say, Dad, thank you.
Yes.
And your daughter, again, Aurora, she's been with me since I watched that. But she said something that was so beautiful, and it makes me think about policymakers can understand emotion. She said she is sad that her granny can't collect her
because of the
school.
lockdown. Yeah, the coronavirus. Yeah.
Yes, and I found it quite moving because my youngest grandson, who I have done that a few times, Connor, I can't go pick him up with his red wagon. What is important is the heart of our shared humanity. So I am finding that policymakers aren't looking and going, oh my God, hello, poor little blah, blah, blah. I think there's just an expansiveness in terms of what trauma-informed means, and the fact that you can have emotions, the fact that you can have anger and anguish, and at the same time you can care.
Yes.
About shared humanity.
Well, I mean, our good politicians in the world right now are the caring ones.
Yes.
Are the ones who are showing emotional leadership and are willing, Jacinda Ardern, Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland.
Scotland, yeah.
There are a lot of good female leaders at the moment. Some of the men are not so great. I'm not quite sure how things are with Justin Trudeau in Canada, but he seems, like a pretty...
I'm satisfied. I must tell you, I think it is a very difficult time, and it's always easy and probably important as well to say but and maybe and la la la. That's what we do. That's how we transcend, transform, etc. I think I'm satisfied, and I'm satisfied. But as you say, it is, the folks that are. So we had, who was it? One of the health minister, maybe the health minister, when she spoke about a month ago, she was crying. You can hear, like, her voice was cracking. And to me, that's like, oh my God, good. I'm so glad, because, oh Christ, you have to go home with your, So relationship, and you used the word witnessing, but witnessing is also part of how we affect policy.
Yes.
I know you know Howard Sapers.
Yes, I'm a
correct.
Big fan.
He was the ombudsman.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the day when you and I met and we had that encounter, Howard and I spoke quite a bit. And it was just, that was about a year before that. I had met the then Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould. I'm just doing a review of her newest book for the Canadian Criminal Justice Association. Her book and Lee Merkel's newest book, Hope Matters, I've reviewed them together. But yes, but Howard, just before I met Jody, I said to him, I just said, oh my God, I'm excited and nervous. Like, what should I really go with? Trust me, I probably had a page. I already knew what I was going with, but I was really nervous, and I know he's quite brilliant with heart as well as head. This is what he said to me. Do what you do. Go with your heart. So this is, big policymaker, wonderful, again. So again, I really apologize. I do give lengthy answers, Jane, but
I love them. They're fine by me.
Thank you. That's the piece. So a very long-winded way of saying to you, at this particular point, at my age, even I still have like that fire, and like, don't tell me that I can't say that, and don't tell me. you know, sometimes now I say that and I say, what is it that you need? I mean, it's coming a little closer because I'm going, wait a second, they need something, man.
Yeah.
But at this age right now, I just think, well, there you go. You were meant to live this age. Because I mean, I did try to take my life a couple of times.
I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Thank goodness you didn't succeed, Margot, you know. But again, it's not surprising, actually, given the complicated grief and trauma. And, you know, very few people, I think, feel that urge without backstories of pain and suffering. And we don't explore them enough, you know.
I will tell you, there's a poem here that I was, oops, just a sec. I'm just going to, I'm going to read in relation to that.
Yeah.
This book I published, what year? 2004, 5, something like that. It was before, it was before recognizing that there is a language around victims that is not being included in a manner that I thought needed to be included. So this book is called Contemplative Waiting, and it's called Write, W-R-I-T-E. So it's another book of writing, Write into the Heart of Your Spiritual Journey. And there's a fantastic Catholic priest who is extremely cutting edge, and I truly adore him. He's cutting edge and fantastic. So his name is Diarmuid Margot, and he was in London for years, and he's come here lots to give talks and stuff like that. He's not traveling now, but I asked Diarmuid if he would give me a quote for the front of this book, and he did. I thought many times of Thomas Merton as I read through these poems. The contemplative waiting becomes an awakening in which the sacred breaks through, even in the mundane and ordinary. One of my favorite books by him is actually called Quantum Theology, and it sounds like a big title. It is kind of a big title, but it's fantastic. It's my fave by him. He gave me one when I was when we met at Trinity 3 years ago. So the poem I'm going to read to you is called Jonah. Jonah.
Okay.
I am in the whale's belly, and try as I might, surrender will not leave me. I have struggled through storms, many created by my own calling, and now, as my will wants to be her own voice, I cannot escape, and I do not wish to. How I would, if I could, carry you with me on this one-woman journey to where one stark star points the way. I am bleeding, not because blood is nourishment. I am bleeding because I need a new scar to be formed. I have wanted you to come with me, to travel into the void, so that we could form with our flesh and flaming soul want a way to move in kindred partnership. I have wanted you to board this ship, the one I knew would throw me to the seas, knowing you were not as yet poised to sit in this belly of this knowing, which has finally confronted me. How do we now navigate away from each other with our wisdom, though savaged and raw, still owning our voice?
Thank you, Margot.
You're welcome.
Margot, what one or two suggestions do you have for policymakers in terms of bringing in this victim-led restorative justice Sawbonna process to Canada or beyond? I mean, obviously, I'd say you wouldn't mind if this is embraced in other countries too.
I'm pretty happy to say it's getting out there. UK, Scotland, Ireland. Yeah, I'm not gonna, it'll sound like I'm always nervous. That's the other thing. We grew up like, be all humble and all this. I'm like, there's humble, and then there's just, I don't know, false
Modesty.
humility. Yeah. Thomas Merton couldn't stand it, so I gotta love him. So to answer your question, here's the thing. First of all, I'm not joking and I'm not kidding when I say this, but I believe that Sawbonna, victim-led restorative justice, is a way in. So in reading, for example, just the word Sawbonna, just shared humanity, all right? Just right there, talking about what does shared humanity mean, okay? And then along with Sawbonna, talking about trauma. Trauma-informed policy is extremely important.
Here, here.
Yes, without it, then we look for good guy and bad guy. We look for simple narratives. We look for grand narratives. Well, he's bad, but I'll forgive him because I'm so special. I'm like, you're not that special. What is wrong with you? And he, same. So that to me, that is an extremely important aspect. And I think being very clear with their own relationship to the process of how we do justice. So asking the questions, if I build more prisons, is that helping victims? Mm-hmm. That's, okay, number one. If I build more prisons, is that actually helping society? The more people I put away and ignore the people that have been harmed, how is that useful to anyone? So Sawbonna says, and this is part of policy. I was asked to write this because it's going to be used with our Justice Minister, David Lametti, in terms of where next to go. Mm-hmm. All right?
So exciting.
It's very exciting. Again, I could cry when I think about it. I'm almost 60 and I'm like, okay, well, Dad, the drill, it just keeps going on. But that is what is key, to ask, are we looking at a Sawbonna, looking through and with this lens and being crystal clear? I don't have to like you and you do not have to like me. I'm not looking for new best friends. Mm. However, if we situate our policy making on a foundation that is actually focused on transformation, that will include addressing the trauma that each of us has. And it will include conversations that are very difficult to have, and stepping away when you have to, and then going back in. To me, that is excruciatingly important when it comes to affecting policy change. I'm not being funny when I say this, but taking the heart, bringing that to the conversation and seeing how we as community and society benefit. Mm. And not being afraid to say, look, I don't like that person. I don't like that thing. It's like, okay, so you're human. Mm. That happens. Mm. And you can't just look to the people that you like. And that to me is extremely important. Mm. And I really do believe that it is absolutely vital for the leadership of a country. So this is the other reason why I do this. Years ago, we've become friends now, but on one of my interviews, Dr. David Swan, he was the head of the Liberal Party in Alberta, and he said to me, your work is good, he said, but unless you speak to the people who can make a difference, True. So to answer your question in terms of policy, we do need to bring the heart, and we need to have, yes, indeed, the research. Mm. I would suggest that even not having the research, the heart is probably, I'm not suggesting one is better than the other, but I have found it very difficult sometimes to feel that there is a care and an understanding if it's just, well, like I said, I've called RJ in one of my angry times years and years ago. I was like, fill out a form. That's what I have to do to be accepted to your club. Go to hell.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't. So
yeah, where is the heart in the process?
and to me, again, I must tell you, Jane, whenever I do talks, lecture, whatever it is, I think I'm probably not answering specifically enough. Like, you know, yeah, I mean, listen, in The Hague, I got questions about Sawbonna, and it was like this specificity of tearing it apart and doing this and this and this. And it was delightful in a way. Again, age was on my side, because I thought, what does that person need? What does that, why is it so important to dissect it to the point where it doesn't exist anymore?
Mm.
So my answer is shared humanity. We are in Sawbonna, and to sit and speak from that point, that's what we need to continue, because we do it. I mean, we do it. We just need to plant the seeds a little further.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite phrases that I learned over the last couple of years from a child psychologist called Dr. Karen Traceman is that relational rupture requires relational repair.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know,
oh yes.
And so the kind of the left brain focus on tick box exercises, or the step, how do you go through it step by step, what does it involve, rather than, again, the emotionality and the being with, being alongside, actually listening, just actually listening, as opposed to going through the checklist and not even looking at the person in the eye. It's the person to person interaction, really, that can be I think transformative, and that sometimes people don't get. That just, you can have a lovely, beautiful model that, if the relationships aren't there, won't do anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other aspect, I must tell you, restorative justice, it is as yet, the reason I was asked to write this paper, I'm just going to read the first. This paper will discuss victim-led restorative justice, addressing the question, why is it that even as restorative justice and restorative processes are offered to victims as a whole, it is rejected? Well, I answer that in here. I will tell you, restorative justice still has, people believe that it means sitting with the rapist, sitting with the murderer. That is the big perception. Look what they do in the news. Oh my God, they've forgiven the murderer and they've sat together. How beautiful. Are you kidding me? No, it is not. Howard Zier, he wrote the foreword actually to one of my books. But Howard, he says it's not that. It can be, but it's not that. Sawbonna is very, very, very clear. Look, you do not have to have coffee, become buddies. You know, you could, it's not like that. It is about, we are in shared humanity. That can happen. But the fact of the matter is, a wonderful, again, another colleague of mine said, Margot, tell people Sawbonna is hard work. Shared humanity is hard work. It says, you know, it's difficult to actually go, I want to take the head off of that person for doing, again, when we met, I mean, I swear to God, Sawbonna has saved me a million times. And when I teach at Centennial College as well. And when I part-time, and when I teach there, I teach my course on global citizenship within the crucible or framework, that sounds much more acceptable, but I say crucible, they get used to me, of Sawbonna. We're doing global citizenship. We have lots of international students. We have gender, we have all of this. So I say to them, look, be respectful. You have your voice in here. If we, you know, do a foundational piece on shared humanity, then I can listen to you. You can listen to me. We don't have to agree. And I mean, sometimes people get a little heated and I'm glad. I'm like, be yourself, you know. And then there's space, right? And then there's more room. So to me, that's extremely important for policy, and it's extremely important for where this country is going with relationship with First Nations people. The hurts, the intergenerational trauma, the absolute pain, the savagery of historical. I mean, I'm just one person, so from 16 to 58. Okay, look at hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I say thank you to Theodore, because essentially it is love that grounds this. And Theodore, I mean, one of his murderers years ago went on a show and said, oh, he's a good Samaritan, he's a saint and all this. I'm thinking, it's not my dad. My dad wouldn't even like that stuff. It's not like that.
He was a man whose life was cut short in his prime.
Pretty much, you know. And I will just say one other thing here. I know we're probably getting long here, but I've started, so I have an online site called Theodore's Place Healing Home.
Mm-hmm.
And on there I have, I have a vision, which is to build actually a healing home for survivors, for crime survivors. On that site, I have a section that has writing and publications, etc., by people who can help with the, give direction on the trauma-informed, on the therapeutic and expressive writing, you know. So there are links there, because the most important thing is not forgetting the heart of the matter, and then we do, you know, we continue from there. And for me, as a poet, we need a way in. And as I said, Jane, Sawbonna offers a way in. And it is not to beat up other people and say this is better. It's not like that. I see it as a fuller way of engaging, because we are talking about some serious big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the ones that we think are really little, oh, trust me, they're coming back to bite you in the behind.
Okay, Margot, will you share one final poem with me, please? And thank you so much for your insights and the work you're doing. It's special, important work. And it is a testament to Theodore's memory, I think. He'd be very proud of you. Of course, he'd prefer to be here, but he'd be very proud of I think, of what you're doing to make the world better and safer.
Thank you. I'm just gonna, I threw my book, my place is a mess. Thank you for saying that. Then I have to say this thing, because Bridget is my mom.
Mm-hmm.
She is now Bridget Rose. She used to be Bridget Van Sluytman, and she adores Theodore every day too. And my stepdad is quite beautiful as well, Steve. So this work is also, and for Bridget, and I thought before she kicks off, or before we die, I would like to have a place where she could go and know that is, yes. So yeah, my work is for Theodore and Bridget and my children and grandkids. So thank you for that. Thank you for witnessing.
My pleasure.
I'm going to read Sweet Muse, and I'm going to read this poem because it is from my book, Wild Self, Real Self, Surrender, Not Control. This is a poetry and journal book as well. My sister-in-law, well, my ex, but we are totally, you look a bit like Caro. She's a beautiful Montreal artist, but this is one of her art. But this is poetry and journal for your wild words. And to me, words are extremely important. Poetry, language. So, Sweet Muse. I commit to you, sweet muse. I beg you to guide this, my pen, my fingers. I commit to the purpose to write, and to your presence too. To prioritizing my soul, my heart, my very self, in a manner that embraces all that I am, all that is me. I offer to faith, mindfulness, enduring trust. It is as if my very being is one with who you are. In believing you are my guide, sweet muse, I open up. I can, even when it is darkest, rejoice. Letting go, giving in, crying, sobbing, dancing a worthy dance with my pen. When each piece seems to break away and leave me stranded, sweet muse, you repair me. Patch me up. Embrace and rejoice with me. Sweet muse, I am learning to believe that I am worth the time it takes to create, to write, to sing, to dance, birthing over and over again, relighting a flame daily. Sweet muse, I commit to you, and I thank you for my voice.
Thank you very
Sawbonna.
much, Margot. That speaks very powerfully about, I suppose, the therapeutic nature of writing. You know, even if it's not always easy, even if it's a volcano erupting of emotion at times, but lots of the great trauma writers or therapists that I've read have said it helps with brain integration and integrating memory and just release. And certainly it's very interesting to hear how you incorporate it so much in your work, obviously for yourself, but also in your plans with the Theodore's healing space, and how people can access parts of themselves that they mightn't always want to access, but need to be accessed. So Margot van Sluytman, Raven Speaks, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful talking to you, really nice reconnecting after this time. And this has been How to Talk Policy and Influence People with me, Jane Mulcahy, a special law and justice series. And I think this is going to be very interesting for people globally, Margot. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck going forward.
Sawbonna, Jane.
Sawbonna.